Benedict, a lot of comments there, like historic moment, the first ever EU-UK summit, etc., already full of success. And yet that first question from the journalist was quite a tough one, saying that perhaps the UK had sold out British fishing.
Yes, so you've got on the one hand the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and you've got the two EU representatives, the Council President Antonio Costa, the Commission President Ursula von der Leyen, and they are all using, you're quite right to underline it, the historical nature of this deal. Let's remember that the British people voted for Brexit by a small margin, but they voted for, against all predictions in the polls, for the United Kingdom to leave the European Union. It is geographically in Europe. Many people make that mistake, but it is out of the EU. That was enacted over 5 years ago. So it's been a long, painful journey of negotiations, political wrangling, huge instability as far as prime ministers are concerned. And we've indeed gone from Conservative Prime Minister to a Labour Prime Minister that we have seen there on front of the stage. Indeed, he just said that Britain is back on the world stage, of course, quoting the deals that he and his government have struck in the last few weeks with the United States and with India. And here is another deal. Interesting, that word that Ursula von der Leyen used straight away in response to that British journalist's question, that a sovereign country can make deals like this. Why is that word important? Brexit was about taking back control, we were told. The British people were told of borders, of its laws. And so those critics, like the leader of the Conservative Party, Kemi Badenoch, or Nigel Farage, leader of Reform UK, that is very much on the up here, although they just have 5 MPs in the House of Commons in the British Parliament, is very much that what Brexit was about freedom and being a sovereign country, and that effectively they are accusing right now and in the minutes preceding this summit already very publicly Keir Starmer basically of selling out, eroding the freedoms that they say were won by Brexit. Notice that Keir Starmer very much said that this was win-win, so win for the EU, win for the UK. And clearly what the British Prime Minister was particularly, as were both EU leaders, keen on doing is underlining this defence and security pact that they say is paving the way for, in an unstable world, an increasingly unstable world. There was great mention of Ukraine and how the interoperability, the fact that the UK, that is also a leader and a big contributor to that support, would be important. Now, it is important, that deal, that defence and security pact, because for the UK defence industry, that it will be able to participate in the EU's new £150 billion Security Action for Europe Fund. As far as fishing is concerned, that is an extremely sensitive subject. Nigel Farage, to mention him again, is saying that if this deal and what the Prime Minister is announcing, it will be the end, he has tweeted, of fishing in the United Kingdom. That is clearly not what the British Prime Minister is saying. The deal is indeed a 12-year agreement, even longer than had been thought, between the UK and the EU, where those partners will retain EU fishing boats access to UK waters. Effectively, that means to 2038. And I think I'll just add at this point, Jeannie, in return, the trade-off is that the UK gets reduced checks on food and drink traded with the EU bloc, making, as the British Prime Minister said, easier for British products such as burgers and British sausages to be sold in the EU. But this is politically risky at a time when the Prime Minister, is increasingly unpopular. So is his government, less than 1 year in Downing Street, and we're at the local elections, just local elections, but clearly Nigel Farage's party, Reform UK, are on the up.
One thing, Benedict, that might be slightly less controversial, but certainly good news for many of us who have children at home or young students themselves, is this notion of more freedom to let young people live, study and work in each other's countries.
Indeed. Now, what is very interesting is that the EU calls it the Youth Mobility Scheme. right at the very end of his opening statement after the two EU leaders, words matter, Jeannie. And what the British Prime Minister, I've just made a note of it, called it is a youth experience scheme, because that mobility is also politically risky here. What the Conservatives are saying, what Nigel Farage from Reform UK are saying, in that, oh, here we go, by the back door, what the British government, what Keir Starmer, who has always been what they still call a Remainer, in other words, for the United Kingdom to remain within the EU bloc, which it has chosen, its people have chosen to come out of, and it has legally come out of, is that this is actually really freedom of movement by the back door. Now, both his ministers have been on the airwaves, on television and radio, will continue to do so. And I'm sure in the questions that are now being asked and will continue to be asked, and the many articles and analysis that will come, is there will be huge criticism from some quarters about what the Prime Minister called this youth experience scheme. Notice that almost as a little sentence afterwards, which is not so little, the Prime Minister, trying to preempt criticism, talked about the fact that he was confident, I'm remembering from memory, I didn't have a chance to make a note of that, but that he was confident that the caps and the limits and the visas would all be carefully looked at. And this is trying to draw a line and saying, look, this is not freedom of movement by the back door. This is a very specific agreement. By the way, we don't have the details of that youth experience scheme. And there is no doubt that there are more youths, young people, in the EU than there are in the UK. So expect huge criticism, I think, of this deal as far as fishing rights are concerned, and also about this youth experience scheme.
All right, Bénédicte, thank you for that. We'll let you go and get some more of those details, listen to the rest of those questions, and we'll check back in with you throughout the day. That's France 24.